You're delirious. Get back to bed." "But, Admiral," Binghamton wailed as he was dragged away by medics. "It was a trap. The alligator. The girls. Cap it finito." Chapter 4. The Sultan and the Princesses. A week later, Binghamton was back in power. Having convinced a medical board that his hallucinations were merely a reaction to a bad batch of quinine, he was determined to regain his dignity. And a visit from the Sultan of Marami was the perfect opportunity. The Sultan and his 3 daughters are arriving. Binghamton lectured Mikhail. "The Admiral wants us to go all out. I want this base 100% in order, and that means you and your riffraff are restricted to Aku Aku Island." "But, sir," Mikhail protested, "there's nothing on Aku Aku but sand and seagulls." "Exactly. Move." However, fate and a failing engine on the Sultan's plane intervened. The Sultan was forced to ditch near the 73 boat's position. Mikhail, ever the opportunist, rescued the Sultan and his daughters. "Wowie, wow, wow, wow," Gruber whispered as the 3 princesses stepped onto the boat. "Silence, you dog," the Sultan roared. "The next man who dares to debase the dignity of the princesses will answer to me." By the time they reached the main base, the Sultan was charmed by Mikhail. "A most efficient officer," he told a fuming Binghamton. "He even let me steer the boat." Binghamton, desperate to reclaim the spotlight, invited the Sultan to a grand dinner. But he made a fatal error. He restricted the crew again. To get back at him, the crew decided to play a ceremonial trick. When the dinner began, the princesses were missing. The crew, specifically Parker, Gruber, and Christie, had borrowed some of the princesses' veils and robes. They performed a traditional Morani dance that involved a lot of clumsy stumbling and a suspicious amount of hair on the princesses' legs. Binghamton, convinced he was witnessing an imposter, grabbed one of the dancers. "I've got you, you phony Balinese bunny." He ripped off the veil to reveal Ensign Parker in a wig. The Sultan rose, trembling with rage. "You have insulted my blood. I will raid your Washington. Stupid infidel." Binghamton stood frozen as the Sultan marched out. "Why me?" he whispered to the ceiling. "Why is it always me?" Chapter 5. The Jinx and the Ghost of PT-13. Binghamton's next plan involved psychological warfare. He discovered a dusty file claiming that the PT-73 was originally the PT-13, a Jinx boat that had lost 2 crews to mysterious explosions. "We'll scare them off the boat," Binghamton told Carpenter. "They're superstitious sailors. They'll beg for a transfer to the North Pole." The crew did indeed get spooked. Strange noises began emanating from the hull at night. Engines started by themselves. Lights flickered. Parker was convinced the ghost of a drowned cook was haunting the galley. "It's a Jinx, Skip!" Parker cried. "We're living on borrowed time." Mikhail, however, found a wire leading from the boat to Binghamton's shack. "So, Lee Bottom wants to play ghost, does he?" Mikhail grinned. "All right, boys, let's give him a haunting he won't forget." That night, the base was silent. Suddenly, the air was filled with low, mournful wailing. A glowing figure appeared outside Binghamton's window. "Binghamton," the ghost moaned, "we have come back from the grave. The ghost of PT-13. Binghamton bolted upright, his teeth chattering. "Mikhail, is that you? Stop this. I order you to stop. We want the transfers." "Wally, the ghost of Admiral Rogers," actually Christie and a lot of flour on his sheet, boomed. "Give us the signed transfer papers, or we take you to the locker. Davy Jones' locker." Binghamton, utterly terrified, threw the papers out the window. The ghosts vanished, taking the papers with them. The next morning, Mikhail presented the found papers to Binghamton, who was so rattled he accidentally signed a requisition for 300 gallons of medicinal brandy for the crew. Chapter 6. The Trial of Sidney the Alligator. Perhaps the most absurd chapter in the history of Taratupa began with a missing wallet. Binghamton had marked 9 $100 bills and accidentally dropped his wallet near the 73 boat, hoping to catch McHale in an act of theft. Instead, a local alligator named Sidney, who had developed a strange fondness for Ensign Parker's peanut butter sandwiches, swallowed the wallet. He ate the captain. Parker screamed when he saw Sidney with Binghamton's ID card in his mouth. Binghamton, however, was convinced the crew had the money. He hauled Parker before a fitness board, accusing him of grand larceny. "I intend to prove," Binghamton shouted at the court-martial, "that this deceitful, thieving ensign stole my money." "I object," Parker cried. "I demand a mistrial on the grounds of temporary insanity, the alligator's insanity. He's crazy about peanut butter." The court was in an uproar until McHale walked in, leading Sidney on a leash. "Sir, we have a key witness of defense. Get that monster out of here." Binghamton shrieked, climbing onto the judge's table. "Sidney, show the court the evidence," McHale commanded. Sidney gave a mighty burp and deposited a soggy leather wallet onto the floor. Binghamton's marked bills were all there, but the humiliation didn't end there. Lieutenant Carpenter, under pressure, admitted the whole thing was a trap set by the captain. "Aha!" the judge boomed. "So it was a frame-up, case dismissed, and Captain Binghamton, I suggest you take a long rest. You're starting to look like an alligator yourself." Chapter 7. The New Caledonia Payroll Caper. The final showdown took place in New Caledonia. Binghamton, in a rare moment of trust, which was actually another trap, ordered the 73 boat to pick up the base payroll, $62,000 in cash. "Take the shortcut," Binghamton had whispered to Parker. "Past the racetrack. It's perfectly safe." Naturally, Parker was hit over the head, and the money vanished. "Skip," Parker moaned when he woke up. "I lost it. All I saw was a girl's ankle with a heart-shaped birthmark." McHale knew they were in trouble. Binghamton was already on his way to New Caledonia with a squad of MPs. "We got to find that girl, and we got to find that bag." The crew scoured the island. They checked ankles in cafes. They searched gambling dens. And they dodged Binghamton in a high-speed jeep chase through the streets of Noumea. Finally, they tracked the thieves to an old warehouse where a group of Vichy French collaborators were hiding. A massive brawl ensued, involving flying baguettes, wine bottles, and an antique cannon. Binghamton arrived just as the dust settled. "All right, McHale, where's the money? Produce it or it's the brig for life." "Wait a minute, Captain," McHale shouted. "Chuck, light the fuse." Parker lit the fuse on the antique cannon. Boom! The cannon didn't fire a ball. It fired a cloud of green paper. $62,000 rained down on the stunned MPs. The thieves had hidden the cash in the barrel. Binghamton stood in the middle of the money shower, his mouth hanging open. $1, $2, $3. "Is it all there, Captain?" McHale asked with a wink. I hate you, McHale," Binghamton whispered, clutching a handful of 20s. "I really, truly hate you." As the PT-73 headed back toward Taratupa, the sun setting over the horizon, McHale looked at his crew, the thieves, the gamblers, and the accidental heroes. "Well, boys," McHale said, lighting a cigar, "another successful mission. Anyone up for a game of poker?" "Only if we use the captain's marked bills, Skip," Gruber laughed. And on the island of Taratupa, the cycle of chaos began anew, under the watchful, twitching eye of Captain Wallace B. Binghamton. The end. The Pirates of Taratupa, the misadventures of McHale's Navy. Chapter 1. The Acid Test and the Admiral. The sun over Taratupa was less a celestial body and more of a personal vendetta. It beat down on the corrugated metal roofs of naval bays with a relentless, humid intensity that made the very air feel like lukewarm soup. Inside the commander's office, Captain Wallace B. Binghamton, known to his men, though never to his face, as Old Lead Bottom, was having a morning that would make a saint reach for a bottle of gin.